You know what absolutely infuriates me about WWE right now? Everyone's sitting there complaining about storylines being predictable, about the product being stale, about nothing mattering anymore. And then when WWE delivers something genuinely shocking, something that actually means something, half the internet is too busy scrolling through their phones to even notice what just happened. Let me tell you something right now. If you missed what went down with the Wyatt Six, if you think this was just another random attack, just another faction doing faction things, then you completely missed the point of professional wrestling. You missed why this business exists. You missed why we all fell in love with this in the first place. And honestly, that says more about you as a fan than it does about WWE. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to a moment that should have stopped every single wrestling fan dead in their tracks. The lights went out. And in that darkness, something woke up. Something that's been dormant. Something that's been waiting. Something that WWE has been building toward since the moment tragedy struck our industry. The Wyatt Six returned. And they didn't just return. They made a statement that echoed through every arena, every household, every wrestling fan's soul. They attacked the Street Profits in a scene so visceral, so intense, so perfectly executed that it reminded us all why horror and wrestling have always been the perfect marriage. But here's what makes my blood boil. Here's what makes me want to reach through this screen and shake some sense into people. This wasn't just an attack. This wasn't just shock value. This wasn't just WWE trying to get a cheap pop or a viral moment. This was a tribute. This was art. This was love manifested through violence and storytelling. May 23rd. Write that date down. Memorize it. Understand what it means. That would have been Bray Wyatt's 38th birthday. 38 years old. A man who revolutionized what it means to be a character in professional wrestling. A man who understood that wrestling isn't just about moves and matches. It's about making people feel something. It's about creating worlds within our world. It's about tapping into fears and desires and emotions that we keep buried deep inside. Bray Wyatt was a genius, and I don't use that word lightly. I don't throw it around like it's nothing. But that man, that incredibly talented, innovative, passionate artist, changed wrestling forever. And he did it while battling demons both in and out of the ring. He gave us The Fiend, he gave us the Wyatt family, he gave us moments that we'll talk about for decades. He created characters so complex, so layered, so psychologically intricate that college courses could be taught about his body of work. And then, far too soon, he was taken from us. So when the Wyatt Six emerged from the shadows on what would have been his 38th birthday, when they chose that night to make their presence felt, when they orchestrated an attack so methodical and symbolic that it felt like Bray himself was booking it from beyond, that wasn't coincidence. That was intentional. That was WWE, that was Uncle Howdy, that was everyone involved in this faction saying we remember, we honor, we continue the legacy. And if you can't see that, if you can't appreciate the layers of meaning behind every single element of what happened, then maybe you need to ask yourself why you're even watching wrestling in the first place. Because what we witnessed wasn't just entertainment, it was a ceremony. It was a ritual performed in front of millions, a dedication to a fallen brother, a continuation of a vision that death itself couldn't extinguish. Let's talk about what actually went down, because the details matter here. Every single second of this attack was choreographed not just for physical impact, but for emotional resonance. The Street Profits, Montez Ford and Angelo Dawkins, two of the most athletic, charismatic, entertaining superstars on the entire roster, were going about their business. They're fan favorites, they're beloved. They represent everything bright and positive about WWE. They bring energy, they bring joy, they bring that infectious enthusiasm that makes you smile even when you're having the worst day. And that's exactly why they were targeted. The Wyatt Six don't exist in the light. They thrive in darkness. They feed on fear. They corrupt the pure. This isn't random violence. This is storytelling at its finest. You take what's good, what's hopeful, what's full of life, and you show that nothing is safe from the darkness. Nothing is beyond the reach of true evil. It's the same principle that made The Fiend attacking Daniel Bryan so powerful. The same reason why the Wyatt family kidnapping Kane resonated so deeply. You take symbols of light and you show them being consumed by shadow. The attack itself was poetry in brutality. Each member of the Wyatt Six played their role perfectly, like a well-rehearsed theater troupe performing their magnum opus. Uncle Howdy, the leader, The visionary, carrying on his brother's legacy, orchestrated everything with the precision of a conductor leading a symphony of chaos. You could see it in his movements, in the way he directed traffic, in the way he pointed and his followers obeyed without hesitation. This wasn't just a man leading a faction. This was a prophet guiding his disciples toward salvation through destruction. Eric Rowan, the monster with a surprising gentleness that makes his violence even more terrifying, brought that unstoppable force energy that he's perfected over years of being WWE's most underrated big man. When Rowan hits you, you stay hit. When he picks you up, you know you're about to experience a world of pain. Dexter Lumis, the silent stalker whose dead eyes have haunted victims for years, brought that psychological warfare element that makes your skin crawl. He doesn't need to speak because his presence says everything. He's the nightmare you can't wake up from, the shadow that follows you home. Joe Gacy, the twisted optimist who believes that destruction is a form of salvation, added that unsettling philosophical dimension that makes you question whether these are villains or whether they're trying to save the WWE universe from itself through painful enlightenment. And Nikki Cross, perhaps the most unhinged of them all, proving once again that she's one of the most underrated performers in the entire company. When Nikki gets that look in her eyes when she starts laughing while inflicting pain, she channels something genuinely disturbing. Something that reminds us that sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones who enjoy what they do. Together, they didn't just attack the Street Profits. They dismantled them. They deconstructed them. They took two of WWE's most athletic superstars and made them look vulnerable, mortal, breakable. They sent a message that reverberated through the entire locker room. A message that said no one is safe, no one is protected. No amount of popularity or athletic ability can save you when the Wyatt Six decide you're next. The choreography of the attack was something to behold. It wasn't just 5 people beating up 2 people. It was calculated, ritualistic, almost ceremonial in its execution. One member would hold while another struck. They took turns, they worked in tandem, they moved like a single organism with multiple limbs all working toward the same destructive purpose. But here's where people are getting it wrong. Here's where the discourse is completely missing the mark, and it's driving me absolutely insane. People are asking why the Street Profits. People are questioning the booking. People are concerned about where this goes next. And those are valid questions in a vacuum, but they're missing the forest for the trees. They're so focused on fantasy booking and predictions and what they think should happen that they're not appreciating what did happen. This attack, on this specific date, was never about the Street Profits specifically. It was about proving that the Wyatt Six are back and they're unpredictable. It was about showing that on Bray Wyatt's birthday, his spirit, his creativity, his willingness to take risks lives on through the performers carrying his torch forward. Every suplex, every strike, every moment of coordinated chaos was a tribute to a man who believed that wrestling should make you uncomfortable, should challenge you, should force you to think and feel and question. Bray never gave you easy answers. He made you work for understanding. He made you piece together clues and symbols and hidden meanings. And the Wyatt Six are continuing that tradition. Bray Wyatt would have been 38. Think about that for a moment. Really let it sink in. 38 years old. That's not old. That's prime years for someone with his mind, his creativity, his understanding of psychology and character work. He should be here right now. He should be the one leading this faction. He should be creating new nightmares, new characters, new reasons for us to tune in every single week. He should be mentoring the next generation, teaching them that wrestling is more than just moves and promos, that it's about creating entire universes that fans can get lost in. Instead, we're left with the echoes of his brilliance, with performers trying their absolute best to honor what he built. And they're succeeding. Against all odds, despite the immense pressure, despite knowing they can never truly replace the irreplaceable, they're creating something meaningful. The Wyatt Six aren't trying to be Bray Wyatt. That would be impossible and disrespectful. Instead, they're channeling his energy, his commitment to the craft, his understanding that wrestling at its best is theatrical, psychological, and physical all at once. They're asking themselves, what would Bray do? What would Bray create? How would Bray push boundaries? And then they're doing their interpretation of that vision. The timing of this return tells you everything you need to know about how seriously WWE is taking this faction and this legacy. They could have brought the Wyatt Six back any time. They could have waited for a bigger pay-per-view moment. They could have built to it with weeks of vignettes. They could have done the typical WWE thing where everything is telegraphed and spoiled before it happens. Social media would have been buzzing with rumors, dirt sheets would have reported every detail, and by the time it happened, we'd all be sitting there going, yeah, we knew this was coming. Instead, they chose authenticity over algorithm. They chose meaning over metrics. They chose to honor Bray Wyatt on his birthday in the most Bray Wyatt way possible through shocking, violent, unforgettable storytelling that will have people talking for weeks, months, maybe years. This is the kind of moment that defines eras. This is the kind of moment that separates good wrestling from great wrestling. This is the kind of moment that reminds us why we fell in love with this ridiculous, beautiful, insane art form in the first place. And the Street Profits. Credit to them, sold this attack like their careers depended on it. Because in a way they did. Montez Ford, who's one of the most naturally gifted athletes WWE has ever seen, someone who can do things in that ring that defy physics and logic, made you believe he was in genuine danger. He sold fear. He sold pain. He sold the reality that these weren't just opponents, these were predators, and he was prey. Angelo Dawkins, the steady partner, the backbone of the team, the guy who's been underrated his entire career because people focus on Montez's athleticism, showed vulnerability we rarely see from him. Dawkins is usually the rock, the stable presence, the one who keeps things grounded. But in this moment, he was overwhelmed, overpowered, outmatched. They understood the assignment. They knew that for this to work, for the Wyatt Six to be taken seriously as a threat, they had to make it look devastating. And they delivered. The image of them laid out, broken, defeated, while the Wyatt Six stood over them like demons who'd just claimed new souls. That's going to be replayed in video packages for the foreseeable future. That's going to be the image that establishes this faction as legitimate threats. What makes this even more powerful is the uncertainty around what comes next. In an era where wrestling fans think they have everything figured out, where every storyline gets predicted and dissected before it even fully develops, where people are more concerned with being right about their predictions than actually enjoying the story, the Wyatt Six represent genuine unpredictability. Who's next? What's the endgame? How deep does this go? Is anyone safe? Are they going after champions? Are they targeting specific people who wronged them? Are they just agents of chaos with no clear goal except destruction? These are the questions that great wrestling makes you ask. These are the questions that keep you invested, that make you tune in next week, that make wrestling feel important again. The Wyatt Six aren't following a formula. They're creating their own path just like Bray always did. They're not concerned with conventional heel tactics or traditional faction dynamics. They exist in their own world with their own rules and their own twisted sense of purpose. Some people are going to say this is too dark, too violent, too intense for modern WWE. To those people, I say you're exactly right, and that's exactly the point. Wrestling needs darkness to make the light meaningful. You need monsters to make heroes matter. You need factions like the Wyatt Six to remind everyone that danger lurks around every corner, that safety is an illusion, that chaos can strike at any moment. Without that element, wrestling becomes bland, predictable, forgettable. It becomes just another sports entertainment product with no edge, no danger, no reason to care. Bray Wyatt understood this better than almost anyone who ever stepped in a ring. He knew that to truly captivate an audience, you have to be willing to make them uncomfortable, to push boundaries, to take risks that others won't. He knew that the most memorable moments in wrestling history aren't the feel-good moments. They're the moments that disturbed us, that shocked us, that made us question what we just witnessed. The Undertaker throwing mankind off Hell in a Cell, Stone Cold getting hit by a car, the Nexus destroying everything in sight. These moments worked because they were uncomfortable, because they felt dangerous, because they reminded us that anything can happen. The fact that this all happened on what would have been his 38th birthday isn't just symbolism, it's a promise that his work won't be forgotten, a promise that his innovations will continue to influence the industry. A promise that somewhere, somehow, his spirit lives on through the performers who were inspired by him, who learned from him, who understood that he was doing something special. Uncle Howdy carrying this torch isn't burden, it's honor. It's responsibility. It's a sacred duty to ensure that everything Bray built, everything he sacrificed, everything he gave to this industry wasn't in vain. And based on what we've seen, he and the entire Wyatt Six faction are more than capable of living up to that responsibility. They're not just living in Bray's shadow, they're casting their own shadow while keeping his memory alive. That's the balance they have to strike, and so far, they're doing it beautifully. Think about the courage it takes to step into this role. Uncle Howdy knows that every single thing he does will be compared to his brother. Every promo, every segment, every creative decision will be held up against one of the greatest creative minds in wrestling history. That kind of pressure would crush most people. But instead of running from it, he's embracing it. He's saying, yes, my brother was a genius, and I'm going to honor him by being the best version of myself that I can be. That takes strength. That takes conviction. That takes love. And you can see that love in every frame of this attack, in every decision that was made, in every symbolic gesture that was included. The wrestling world lost something irreplaceable when Bray Wyatt passed away. We lost a once-in-a-generation talent, someone who understood that wrestling is mythology, that we're creating modern folklore, that the characters we create can transcend the ring and become part of popular culture. But through the Wyatt Six, through this tribute on his birthday, through the commitment to continuing his vision, we're reminded that while the man may be gone, the legacy lives forever. And that's not just some platitude. That's not just something nice to say. That's the truth. Bray Wyatt changed wrestling. He proved that you could be weird, you could be dark, you could be unconventional and still connect with millions of people. He proved that wrestling fans are smarter than they're given credit for, that they want complexity and layers and mystery. So where does this leave us? Where does this leave the Street Profits? Where does this leave WWE? Honestly, in the most exciting position possible. We have a faction that's genuinely unpredictable, that's backed by emotional resonance and meaningful storytelling, that's willing to be controversial and uncomfortable. We have a locker room full of potential victims, each one representing a different type of victim, a different message the Wyatt Six might want to send. We have fans who are actually surprised by something in wrestling, which is increasingly rare in this day and age. And we have a tribute to one of the greatest minds wrestling has ever seen, executed perfectly on a date that will forever hold significance. If you're not paying attention to the Wyatt Six, if you're not invested in where this goes, if you didn't feel something watching that attack unfold on Bray Wyatt's birthday, then I genuinely don't know what you're looking for from professional wrestling. This is storytelling. This is art. This is everything that makes wrestling the greatest form of entertainment on earth. The Wyatt Six stole the show not through flashy moves or cheap heat, but through authentic, meaningful, purposeful storytelling that honors the past while creating the future. Bray Wyatt would be proud. And that's the highest compliment anyone could possibly give. This is how you honor a legend. This is how you continue a legacy. This is how you prove that some lights never truly go out. They just find new ways to shine through the darkness.